Hi scrapbook friends, it's Nicole from Nicole's Scrapbooks, and I wanted to share a page idea with you that is based on a layout shared on the Creative Memories Advisor Facebook group by an advisor named Kumiko Ito. And this is her original design with this double triangle, the roller coaster border punch. She has a fence and some flowers and all of that, but I'm just going to share with you this double diamond design. But this is Kumiko's idea. She's the one that I got it from. I've started a layout already in one of my albums. It is not done. It's a work in progress. This is our Disneyland, California trip from a couple years ago. And so here's my version, which is slightly different than hers. She staggered her triangles a little bit differently than I did mine. So as you're doing this idea yourself, it's not very hard, but realize that you have a lot of flexibility in what you might want to do with your own layout. So I'm just going to show you the bare bones of how to do it. And of course, yours is going to look completely different based on the papers and things that you choose. So I'm going to use a piece from the Memoirs and Memories collection. This is one of our collections that's retiring. I like this page because it has a lot of contrast between the two sides. So it's going to make a very dramatic layout, I think, when we do the double diamonds. And I'm just going to do one side to show you how to do it, and then you can figure out the rest on your own. So I'm going to use one of my favorite cardstock pieces that come in a paper pack. It's from a couple years ago, actually. I have a whole stack of them behind me to use as the base of my page. Of course, you could do this directly on a Creative Memories page or whatever color cardstock background you want, but I think you'll be able to see it better than on this self-healing mat I have on my workstation. So the first thing you want to do, you want to check and see if there's any kind of a directional pattern on either side of your paper, and if you think that that's going to matter as far as which direction you want the diamond to be in. Do you want it to be along with these lines, or do you want it to be opposite of these lines? And I kind of think I want it to be opposite of these lines. So I'm going to fold across the lines, and you just fold your paper directly in half so that you end up with a 6 by 12 piece of paper. Now, the hard thing is to cut this, you're going to have to cut on the diagonal, and our trimmer doesn't quite cut that far. So it is a little bit tricky to position this, but we want to cut the point. It doesn't really matter which direction you cut. We want to cut from one point here to the other point on the other end. And so as you can see, well, maybe you can't see, this is longer than my trimmer, just barely longer than my trimmer. Let's see if I can move this up a little bit. All right, a little bit longer than my trimmer. So I'm going to just position as best I can on here. And this is where these little sightline guides that live up here in the blue ends of your trimmer track are going to come really in handy. So I'm going to start with this sightline, and I'm going to line it up exactly with this. All right, I'm going to have to kind of overlap this a little bit. Over this little edge, but I'm cutting this part off, so I don't care if it gets a little bit creased. So I'm going to line my little sight line up exactly with the, oh, come on. Sorry, I have to put it down here where I can hold on to it. Line up the sight line exactly with the edge of that corner. And then do the same thing with the sight line on the other end, so that you can see that the sight line lines up right with the corner on both ends because it's longer than the trimmer track. And then you're just going to cut as far as you can, which is not going to be the whole way because this trimmer only cuts to 12.5 inches, and this is probably about 13 inches. So then you're just going to take your scissors and just carefully even up that little cut end to end. All right, so here's my end to end, and then you can set these aside. You could if you wanted to cut these to smaller pieces to accent your page. I'm not going to use them for this. Now you take the cut edge and you line it up with the 1/2 inch line. So if you remember from my trimmer demo, the 1/2 inch line is not necessarily marked very well, but it's this first line after the mat where you start to get back into the cutting measurements. So this very first line right here is the 1/2 inch line, and you're just going to want to line your paper up with that, and you'll see that it still pokes off the edge at the top and the bottom. I'll do it like that. How's that? Pokes off the edge at the top and bottom, but it doesn't matter because we're going to just be cutting on this side. So we're cutting a 1/2 inch, and you could of course do this with a 1 inch if you wanted to, or 3/4 or whatever you want to do. So there's my first piece, and I'm just going to keep going, cutting at the 1/2 inch as many times as you want to. You could cut all the way to the tiny tippity end, or you could just do 3 lines or whatever you want to do. Because the fun part comes after these pieces are all cut and you can figure out how you want to arrange them on your page. You're also going to want some repositionable adhesive just to help you figure out what you want to do. But the only tricky part really is that first cut where you have to line up using the sight lines and cut longer than the actual trimmer mat can cut. So just, you know, be aware that that's going to happen. You're going to have to finish off a little bit with your scissors. All right, I think I'll do one more cut. It would probably be tricky to go all the way in on this just because you got to have some place to hold onto your paper. Okay, one more. But I do want a little triangle left for the middle. All right, so here's my last little piece. And you can see I kind of put them in order as I was cutting them on purpose, trying to keep them organized because that makes it a little bit easier. Of course, if I want to still be on camera, I have to scoot those over a little bit. So I'm going to start with the biggest one, and then you can decide if you want, which side you want. I like the black and white dots, so I'm going to start with those. I'm going to use my repositionable adhesive. Just put, you know, a little bit, 1/4 inch or so. You can just run your repositionable all the way down this, but I don't think you need to, and I always like to be frugal with my tape. So this first one is actually a little bit easier because we know that this was folded in half, the entire piece of paper. So I'm going to take the end of this and put it at one corner of the paper. Hope you can see that. And take the other end and put it at the other end, exact corner of the paper. And then I'm just going to smooth this out so that it lies flat. And so if I take a ruler, hopefully this will be right at the 6-inch mark. And there it is. Voila, right at the 6-inch mark. Okay, so now you can decide if you want to skip one. The way Kumiko did hers was she skipped one and then she flipped it over. So use the piece that you've cut out as a spacer, and then, you know, you could stick the next one down, and the spacer would mean that you know that this is going to be exactly the same size. With mine, I chose to do it a little differently, and I did I don't know, my husband was in the Army for many years, and all I can think of is dress right dress, but that's not what I want to say. You know, dark light dark, so you could do it like this. You could just use the one side if you only like the polka dot side. You know, you can stick these down and just keep going in. You know, I mean, I would use the middle pieces to position. So lots of really cool options you can do with this. I don't know what to call it. She didn't really call it anything. This double diamond, single diamond, I don't know, triangle. I don't know. So you could do it definitely as a single layout. You could also do it as a double page layout. I would cut two that were identical, or you could take the pieces that you didn't use and put them just like in the negative space on the other side. I think that could look really cool by positioning them like this. And then this would go here, and this would go here. So this way you'd only have, you know, one piece of paper, and you wouldn't waste all these extra diamonds or triangles that we cut. All right, so I'm not going to finish this sticking these down because frankly, I don't know what I'm going to do with this particular triangle that I cut. I just was working on the other layout that I showed you earlier today, and I think it turned out really cool and I liked it. And so I wanted to show you how to cut your own. So that I think looks kind of funky. You could, you know, use that with, you could do two different papers, or you could use all the papers, not leave any space, and just give yourself all these different sized triangles. All right, they're not stuck down as you can tell, but hopefully you're getting an idea of the many different things you could do with this particular layout. And of course you could take this paper and keep cutting it in 1/2-inch increments and put those strips this way and do a whole background page. I don't know what I like. I don't know if I like the whole thing. I don't know if I like the spacing. I kind of like the whole thing. And of course you wouldn't have to do it across 2 pages. You could do it like this, like a little mountain. You could do it as a V. You know, lots of really cool things that you can do with this large triangle layout based on this idea from Kumiko, who I just appreciate sharing with us. And, you know, so many very creative advisors out there that share these ideas, and the rest of us can benefit from their creativity and willingness to share. So I hope that you will try this large diamond technique. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Maybe watch the part again where I showed how to cut from side to side. That's the only tricky part, is figuring out how to measure that with the trimmer and with those sightline guides on the trimmer. So there you go. I hope that you are inspired by this idea like I was. And when my California Disney, we went to California and we went to Disneyland. And when those albums are done, I will, of course, share those with you. But I was so excited about this technique. I wanted to share it with you, even though, you know, I don't have a completely finished layout. The layout that I have still needs a title and some journaling. And I think I'm going to fluff it up a little bit with, I think maybe some little gems. This is the Cloud Border Maker cartridge. I just punched it on both sides, and I'll do that at some point in another video. If you want to replicate this, cut your Cloud Border Maker cartridge and then line it up on the 1 1/4 inch line. And then make sure that when you cut it, you are not cutting exactly symmetrical. I didn't like the way that looked. Kind of flip it and cut it. But I'm not gonna, I actually don't have my Cloud cartridge handy, so I can't show you that tip right now, but the big diamond is what I wanted to show you. And for this one, I cut 2 sheets so that I could have identical on either side. But whatever you decide to do, I think this layout has a lot of potential. And so someday when I do an album flip through, you can say, hey, I remember that layout. Now you'll know what it looks like when it's done. All right, there you go. The large triangle / diamond layout. And I hope that you will give it a try and that it will spark your creativity. And I would love to see what you come up with. If you want to message me on my Facebook page at Nicole's Scrapbooks, facebook.com/Nicole's Scrapbooks. All right. Thank you so much and happy scrapbooking.